Well, good evening, guys. And this is the first video on my additional channel, Joyce Knows Who Done It. So I got a lot of requests for this, and I thought this was a good idea to make an additional channel where I could look at some of the more famous and infamous individuals and look at how or why they died, whether it was suicide, um, death by accident, or even murder, and look at the person involved and see if they were maybe even karmically tied. So, tonight, my very first video I want to do is someone that I used to love so much growing up, not so much as I got older and he got older, but when I was young. And Michael Jackson is who I want to look at. I want to look at Michael Jackson as it pertains to Conrad Murray. So, who is Conrad Murray? Conrad Murray was a doctor, okay? I do know that he had a family practice in Nevada, in Las Vegas, at the time that I lived there, but he was having problems with his license there. And I also think he had a location he practiced in Texas. He had some problems as well as California. So, how did Conrad and Michael get together? Just to not make it so long on that, Michael was going to go on his last tour. It was called This Is It. This is it. And he just made this big point of it. And if you ever notice when people are making these big speeches or they maybe do a song or something, they'll put in something that is almost indicative that they're going to pass away. And so he was making a real point that this is it. This is my last tour. That's it. I'm not touring anymore. Little did he know that that was going to actually be the truth for them. And he said it. Um, so when he's with his insurance company, there was a talent agency that Michael was under that he was supposed to do 50 cities, a 50 city tour. And at this time, he was 50. And it could have been even more than that, to be honest with you. And so he was going to do all these tours and he was going to make a lot of money because at this time, Michael was really in debt. He still had Neverland. He had the property. He wasn't living there after it got raided when people had him investigated for the child sex allegations. And that was twice that that happened. But I'm not looking at that today. Um, so he wasn't going to live there anymore, and he wasn't. And he sort of lived here and lived there, and he finally found a place in California, and he wanted to live there. Well, Michael was 50, or he's going to be 50. Okay, so he was tired, and the insurance company wanted to make sure that he was going to be fine. Okay. Michael had many problems starting from the 80s when the top of his scalp had been burned from the Pepsi commercial, if you remember that. And he had injuries from dancing, as well as just age, just tired in general, and needing the money. And I think when you work and you need the money, you're working for the money rather than the joy of working, that puts a whole new spin on the situation. But that was the case for Michael. He was deeply in debt, and even though he had made a lot of money, he also had spent a lot of money. Ultimately, he needed a doctor, and the reason he needed a doctor was because he had problems sleeping. They say he had been going to Dr. Klein, who was a well-known Hollywood dermatologist, but a pill pusher is what he really was. He's long since deceased, and this is alleged. He was going to Dr. Klein, and he needed someone else to be able to tour with him. And so he hired Conrad Murray. Uh, Conrad Murray was a little bit sketch, anyways. He was from St. Andrew, Grenada. And it's actually Greenville is the location, the actual location in Grenada. And not he wasn't sketch because he was from Grenada. It was because some of his practices were a little bit far out. Okay, they weren't necessarily all traditional, and he did have people that were highly devoted to his care, but it wasn't necessarily. It wasn't may have not always been the highest quality. Nevertheless, he and Michael got together And Michael would ask for his milk, which what he was asking for was propofol in order to help him sleep. And the doctor would give it to him. On the night that he died, he had given Michael several different sleeping medications, relaxation medications, so he could rest because he was trying to rehearse. And like I said, he was going to put this big show together, and he just wasn't getting the rest. And that night, Dr. Murray had given him several different injections and pills, and it just wasn't getting him to sleep. He finally asked the doctor, could he have his milk? And the milk, like I said, was propofol. Now, this is a particular medicine, and I am no doctor at all, but it is a medication that is used to put you to sleep, help to anesthetize you during surgery. It is only supposed to be used in the surgery room with the correct anesthesiologist and ventilation in order to resuscitate you in case, you had a bad accident with that. The doctor had none of that, and he was in Michael's bedroom. They were doing this. And he had an IV. The doctor hooked up an IV to him, and he had been giving him medicine in that anyways. And he proceeded to give Michael the medicine. The doctor then, even though Michael had pled with him, don't leave me while I'm asleep, stay with me. Once Michael did go to sleep, the doctor went to the bathroom. It's alleged that he had gotten a call from a friend, a female friend, and he was on the phone and in the bathroom having the conversation with that person. Like I said, that's what's alleged. The doctor claims he was there by the bed. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. He came back, checked on Michael. Michael was not breathing. We don't know at that point how long Michael had been deceased, but he actually died in the bed. The doctor then proceeded to give him resuscitation, but he did it on the bed. A doctor knows you have to have a hard surface, and he should have moved him onto the floor, but he did not. My speculation is because he knew that Michael was already gone. Now, the doctor did not want to be responsible for pronouncing him dead, and so he had someone in the house call an ambulance, and they did, and they took him to Cedar Sinai, and then that's where they pronounced him dead. He did not want that on his hands. Ultimately, he went to trial, and he was found guilty of negligence, and he spent just a mere 3 years in jail. The whole time, he never took responsibility. He even claimed that Michael gave himself additional medication, which no one believed that because it'd be hard to believe if he was as highly medicated as he was. They did the toxicology, they showed he was very full of medication. Why would he then wake himself up out of a solid sleep, get a syringe, fill it up with the correct amount of dosage for his height and his weight, and somehow manage to inject himself? Yeah. So I have some questions, but I want to look at Dr. Conrad. Dr. Conrad was born February 19th, 1953. At that time, the time of death, or the year that Michael died, it was 2009. So if I look at the doctor's birthday during the universal year of 2009, that is an 11. And it is what it is. It's a master number. It is a number about tearing things down. And little did he know he was going to tear down the life of the king of pop. That 11 plus his birthday, his month, and his day put him in a number 5 personal year that year. Number 5, I've told you before, it is a very severe number. It is strictly full of tests and lessons. And as you know, the universe is a classroom, and when it gives you the test, you better be ready because if you're not, you're going to fail and there's going to be consequences. And that's what happened to him. And of course, Conrad took it just like he would. He's a number 3 life path. I say this to people with number 3 life paths, and they never want to claim this. And yet I see it all the time that if you have a number 3 life path, you are outgoing. You do like to have fun. You like to be, where the action is and having the cocktails heels and dancing and kicking your legs up. You're very charming, um, sociable, very feminine energy about you. Very, you care about people. You're nurturing. So that would uh, speak to him being in the medical profession. But when it's ill dignified, as his was, you always play the victim. And if you saw the trial, that's all he did. To this day, he's never taken responsibility for any part of what happened to Michael. He plays the victim. He plays the victim. Um, his rising sign is in Gemini. And so I just give a brief natal, by the way. His rising in Gemini. So that tells me that this doctor did a lot of jumping for this and jumping to that and trying a little bit this and trying a little bit of that, whether it was within his practice or in his life as a whole, trying to find the answer. Like throw a bunch of stickies on the wall and whatever stuck. That's either what he would do or what he would practice in. Lots of different ideas, lots of moving fast. He seems like a Gemini on the outside, sociable. The number three is sociable, talkative. Um, Someone would find him interesting enough to hire him for the job. Because with that Mercury in Gemini, his rising Gemini, and Michael with his Mercury and his Virgo, they would find a commonality. Their minds would have moved quickly. The reality is, though, the way he sees the world is as a Pisces. Yeah. His sun is in Pisces. His sun is in Pisces. His Mercury is in Pisces. So he sees the world through dreamy eyes and plans of wishes of great wealth and fame and fortune. Um, he thinks outside of the box in the sense of not sticking to traditional cures and medicines, but even venturing in the darker side of medical practices and herbs and different things like that. A real dreamy, real wishy-washy, real back and forth. Um, hard to really pin down. Think about a goldfish in a bowl. Very hard to pin down. Very out there. Not real, especially stable. Not stable. His moon is in Taurus. That's a nice warm place to have a moon in. It speaks of stability, but it also speaks of getting really excited and warm and fuzzies from things, either good, delicious foods and plenty of it, or the finer things in life. And Michael was going to be able to supply him with all those finer things in life. Um, Working, very much a hard worker. So he did stay in his practices. It wasn't like he was out golfing, it just wasn't um, practical. It just wasn't traditional. That's the word. He would not have been traditional with that much Pisces. Um, his Venus is in Aries. That means that he didn't like to be pinned down to anything anyway. So even though he worked with Michael, he didn't really want to work with any one person. He didn't like that. He likes a lot of space and a lot of freedom. But as long as it was going to pay the bill, and he was getting paid some exorbitant amount of money, not by Michael, but by the insurance company that was covering for Michael. Michael vouched for him. Michael said that's who he wanted. Michael wanted someone who would be non traditional and would be able to not feel tied to standards and practices. This is just alleged, and would be able to give him that propofol in his bedroom if that's what he needed. The doctor's Mars is in 80 in Aries, so right away when we see that, we know that fire on fire, and he can get hot mad, and he got really mad once the shit hit the fan, quite frankly, and he really tried to put this on Michael. He would not take the blame for it at all. And I'm talking about red hot fighting mad. He would not. He could not. Um, his Jupiter again is in Taurus. Nice place for Jupiter to be because Jupiter loves beautiful things and bountiful and a lot of, and Taurus does too. So that goes together beautifully. Um, when I looked at his chart, he had options because he has the ability to have freedom. This was not destiny. He could have easily had said no, But sadly, what goes along with that freedom many times is that you have public confrontations, public troubles. Your troubles come to the limelight, and his did. When I look at Michael, and I'm not looking at all Michael, but I'm looking at a couple of things that interest me. That Michael had a lot of Leo and Virgo energy, as well as Scorpio. He had a Scorpio rising, and that would tell me that he was very secretive. There were things that Michael was doing that he did not want to be seen in the public. He wanted to have a different appearance. So, thus, the mask, the glove, um, the stories that people, some of his ardent fans claimed, yes, he had vitiligo. Other ones, not so much. He did a skin bleaching. Um, his Virgo made him a perfectionist. Uh, Generally a good judge of people, but more so just judgy anyways. And I think that caused his conflict with his own family, judging how they moved. His Leo had him wanting to be in charge and to dominate his situation, even to where he would be arrogant about it and domineering about it. So no one was going to tell him he couldn't have Dr. Conrad. If Dr. Conrad could agree to fulfill his needs, his sleeping needs, or any other needs, because Michael was a drinker. I won't say alcoholic, but he was a drinker, and he took additional pills. This is all alleged, but this is the things that he did not want you to see. And then he had Libra energy as well that really made it hard for him to make really clear decisions because when you are that famous and you've got a lot to do, you don't have the time to just weigh all the pros and cons and go back and forth. So he made a snap decision and hired that guy. Um, Michael, in 2009, was in a number 3 year. Michael wanted to go on the tour. He didn't love the idea, but he was willing. He was getting himself up and getting the energy, gonna make the money, but then he would turn around and cry and complain about it. Cry and complain, cry and complain. And I tell people all the time, anything you focus on is what grows. So he was crying and complaining and fussing about this, taking this, doing this, but he knew he had to do it financially. And he focused on it so much he got the end. Michael carried a lot of weight. He's a number 6 life path. It's kind of funny how those two life paths, a 3 and a 6, go together. Michael would have carried the weight for this guy. And ultimately, even in his death, that's what happened. The guy put the weight on Michael. He absolutely did. So now I want to throw a few cards and I want to take a look. And the first question I have, now the doctor claims he was not in the room with Michael Jackson. One moment, let me invoke my cards. The doctor claims he was not in the room with Michael when Michael, after he injected him. No, I'm sorry, he claimed he was in the room. Um, but actually, I don't think he was in the room. So now I want to know, was Conrad Murray sitting in the room with Michael the whole time? Was Conrad Murray sitting in the room with Michael the whole time on the day he died? Was Conrad Murray sitting in the room with Michael the whole time? Ah, okay. So I've got the 4 of Cups, and I'm looking at this, and this reminds me the doctor was like tired, he was bored, and so he didn't stay in the room. He was tired, he was bored, he probably was ready to go home. He didn't see staying in the room. But what did he do? He was in touch with a woman. There is a woman that he was talking to on the phone that night, but he did not do it in the room with Michael. If you take a closer look at this picture, this is like there's a house back here where Michael would have been, but he's out here. He's by himself, okay? He's not there in the house, right? He's outside. He's away. He's almost kind of sick of it, but he's just going to get the money. Hmm. Yeah. And then there's poor Michael by himself. This is the Five of Swords. Yeah. Someone that's been beat down. I want to say bully, but more of his energy drained away. That something very harsh and severe happened to. So was Conrad Murray in the room? No, he was not in the room. He was in on the phone with a female. My next question is, why did Conrad Murray try to resuscitate Michael on the bed? Why did Conrad Murray, let me see Michael, let me see Michael. Why did Conrad Murray try to resuscitate you on the bed? Why did Conrad Murray try to resuscitate you on the bed? Why? Why? Mm. This is the magician. This tells me that this doctor thought, I have it going on. I know what I'm doing. I'm good at what I do. I can bring him back no matter where he is, on the floor, on the bed, or whatever. I've got the magic touch. I got what it takes to make it happen. I can do that. I see him trying. This is actually the Temperance card, and it's two cups being flown back together, or like that. And that would be almost the him, Murray, breathing life or attempted to into Michael's mouth. Except if you take a look, she's looking away. So that tells me that not only did he feel like, oh, I can do this, this is not a problem. Um, when things weren't going all right, he didn't put his 100% energy in. Something else had him distracted. Something else had him distracted. And I think it might have been the kids. I think it might have been the kids because we have um, the Knight of Wands coming in, and this almost looks like Prince. Almost looks like Prince, um, Prince Jackson. He didn't focus on him because there were kids in the room. There was kids in the room. Someone was in the room, so he couldn't put all his energy into it. Even though he was resuscitating him, he didn't want them to see what he was doing. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Michael just told me he didn't want them to know because he didn't want them to know that he was already dead. He wanted to act like he didn't have anything to do with it. That's why. Yep. Yeah. There's security coming in as well. Look, and there were people looking, and he didn't want to show, as a medical profession, he would have known that Michael had expired. Okay. Where you and I maybe not for sure. But he did. But he didn't want them to know that he knew. Okay. So he told them to call help when he knew help was not going to do anything at all. Funny too, I was going to say, Michael also had free will. Michael had free will. Michael did not have to hire this guy. Michael was in his addiction. Michael was in his addiction. And Michael has public conflicts. So this was not destined. This was a decision. Life is always about our decisions. And Michael made a bad decision. Was Michael addicted at this time? Was Michael addicted at this time? Yeah. Well, it looks like Michael had problems. Michael's had problems, whether it be addiction, money, whatever. We have the chariot. And his goal for doing the whole concert was, I want to get out of my hard times, okay, within myself and financially, and uh, having people look at me negatively for the things that had transpired with some of the children. And I want to get into better times. And that's what all he was thinking about. I got to do this. I got to do this. I want to get on to better times. And yeah, Michael was drinking. Michael definitely was drinking, even though Michael was very loved, very loved. Michael had alcohol addictions. He did. He had alcohol addictions. And Michael needed to have put himself in timeout, to be honest with it. Um, yeah. So that is what happened. And lastly, I just want to know before I go is, did Conrad Murray have a sense of remorse? Did Conrad Murray, does he feel sorry about what he did? Will he ever feel sorry about what he did? Will Conrad Murray ever feel sorry about what he did? Will Conrad Murray ever feel sorry about what he did? I don't know if he ever will. He's so much of, I'm not accepting the blame. Will he ever? Will he ever? No, he's thinking about money. You know what? I wouldn't even be surprised if he hasn't already or he does make a book. Yeah. No, he has no remorse. He's happy living his life. That's the Ten of Cups. He's happy living his life and he's moved on. Yep. He's moved on. His thing is he wants life to be back the way it was when he had his different practices and things like that. And I think they may have allowed him to practice either in California or Nevada. I'm not sure. But in terms of Michael, he's not thinking about Michael at all. Mm-mm. He's got new energy and he wants to put it back into his practice and generate an income for himself. But what he's not thinking about is Michael Jackson, unless someone has brought it to his attention, because he's nondescript, so no one would even know what he looked like. But anyways, guys, that's my first video. I hope you like it.